Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, Star Trek Lower Decks has been cancelled. It wasn't planned to end in Season 5 like some, New Trek fans are trying to claim it was. No, like they did with Discovery. No, like Discovery, it's been cancelled in its 5th season. The producers thought they were going to do a 6th, maybe 7th season and were planning for that, and they were cancelled. Now, Picard was always meant to be 3 seasons, so that wasn't cancelled. There was no revisionism at the 3rd season. It was always meant to be 3 years. That's what Patrick Stewart said he'd do. Prodigy was cancelled after 2 years. It was supposed to continue into a 3rd season. That was cancelled as well. So 3 out of the 5 Star Trek shows in production have been cancelled. 1 ended naturally. This is not looking good for the new golden age of Star Trek. We're being told that this is the golden age of Star Trek because they've had more shows in production under the IP than ever before. But mostly they were divisive, and there's no clear sort of indication whether they're actually successful or not. There are fans who say it was successful, the fans that say it wasn't. We don't have the official numbers, so there are more indications that it was unsuccessful than successful, but no one has the actual numbers to really argue that accurately. So critically there are issues as well. So I'm glad Discovery's gone. I'm glad Lower Decks is going. The good thing about Lower Decks was it did appear to be made in the original canon universe, at least superficially, visually. It looked like the original Star Trek and the Next Generation Star Trek, but, as animated form, which is nice, except it was a parody. And the problem with parodies are basically a way to make money off a dying franchise. When your show is dead or in decline, you make another show making fun of that show, so you get like one sort of last run, one more sort of show out of it. And that's sort of what they were doing here, where New Trek had hired someone to create a parody of the original Star Trek series and Next Generation series and that sort of universe, and they were ultimately hurting it, because when you make fun of it and parody it, it makes it harder for people coming in and watching it after seeing the parody and taking it seriously. So it was ultimately hurting Star Trek. And so far as Mike McMahon goes, he is a fan, he loves Star Trek, he thought he was doing a good thing, and I think he did his best, and he's a bit upset, and I feel bad for him. But ultimately, he was one of those people who watched Star Trek from the outside and laughed at it. Not with it, when it was being funny, but laughed at it and enjoyed it, but as something to sort of, as an oddity to view at from the outside. That's why when he somehow got money to do an 8th season of Next Generation in like a novel form, he did it as a parody, and why he was hired to do this show, which was a parody. So ultimately I think it benefits Star Trek. Now, why were they cancelled after 5 years? It appears that Kurtzman had like that in the contract. It was fairly ironclad that they get 5 seasons, and they were budgeted for 5 seasons, like all the studio space and stages that need to be hired out. And with the animated show it's different, but with the live action shows, the sets built up front, all the money they spent up front was supposed to be sort of paid for over the 5-year run of the show. So if you cancel the show during that run, they're out of pocket, they can counter, and that seems to be how they kept the shows on air when Netflix and that wanted out of Discovery and wanted out of Picard. They got out after the 3 years because apparently that's all it was a mess. But this is where they could end it. So 5 years is where they ended Discovery, and 5 years is where they ended Lower Decks. And Strange New Worlds has a 4th season. It has been renewed. I reckon it will continue on to 5 years for the same reason that Discovery and Lower Decks got 5 years. Picard was always meant to end after 3 seasons, like I said. Now, Prodigy is a bit different, because sometimes animated shows, what they do is they will there'll be a production for a year or so, and they'll have a specific amount of episodes that they've been contracted to make. And that will either be a season and they'll get renewed season after season, year after year, and go into production, or that's all they get and they divvy that up into seasons, like She-Ra did that. I think they got a 52 episode production run, and they split it up into 4 or 5 seasons. So years after the show had finished and the people had all moved on, people still thought the show was in production, they were going to get future seasons because they were still getting seasons, but they were episodes that had been started years ago. So but then they were scrubbed off the network because they didn't do well, and at least Lower Decks is going to get its premiere and the 5th season shown on Paramount Plus, and the other seasons apparently are going to stay on Paramount Plus. That's at least what they've said. They put out a statement basically saying they're going to miss the shows, and they put out a statement trying to soften the blow by pointing out that Strange New Worlds is going into production, continuing, renewed for a 4th season. And of course, Starfleet Academy is going into production eventually. It's in pre-production now, but no one really wants that show. What they wanted was a continuation of Legacy, a continuation of Picard, because Picard season 3, because they only really planned the first 2 seasons and they had 3 planned, and they filmed 2 and 3 back to back basically, Terry Matalas was able to kind of sneak in and do a final season of The Next Generation, an actual season of Star Trek, without Kurtzman sort of noticing, because he was distracted by other things, because they really only focused on the first 2 years of the show. So that was his luck. But that was a ratings hit. It was in the top 10 Nelson ratings for all of TV. Whereas I think Strange New Worlds is really just top 10 in Paramount Plus, and Discovery didn't even do that well, I don't think. But either way, it's done, it's cancelled. It wasn't supposed to end, it was definitely cancelled. So now, out of this golden era of Star Trek, we're being told we're in this golden era of Star Trek, 3 out of 5 shows have been cancelled. 1 was only meant to be 3 years. So we're down to 1 show, which is okay and doing okay, has some huge flaws, but has at least established that this whole universe is in a different timeline, although other fans will still deny that and say it's just a mess. But ultimately, it's done, it's gone,